Imagine it's 1975. A parent looks at their child and says, "You spend money on ridiculous things." Fast forward to 1995. A parent looks at their child and says, "You spend money on ridiculous things." Fast forward to today. A parent looks at their child and says, "You spend money on ridiculous things." Notice a pattern. Every generation is absolutely convinced that the next generation has no idea how money works. It's one of the most reliable traditions in human history, right up there with complaining about traffic and pretending music was better when you were young. The details change. The complaints stay exactly the same. Baby boomers criticized Gen X criticized millennials. Millennials criticized Gen Z. And one day, Gen Z will criticize whatever generation comes next, probably through some futuristic hologram app nobody understands. Because apparently every generation reaches a certain age and immediately receives a certificate authorizing them to complain about young people's spending habits. But why does this happen? Why does every generation think the next generation is bad with money? The answer is surprisingly interesting, and it has very little to do with money. Let's start with memory. Human memory is not a spreadsheet. It's more like a movie trailer. It keeps the highlights, deletes the boring parts, and occasionally edits reality for dramatic effect. Imagine someone says, "When I was young, I never wasted money." Really? Never? Not once? Not a single questionable purchase? Not one terrible fashion trend? Not one appliance advertised on late-night television? Of course they did. Everybody does. The difference is that people forget their own financial mistakes. They remember everyone else's. It's a remarkable feature of the human brain. Then there's the nostalgia effect, possibly the most powerful economic force nobody talks about. Every generation remembers a version of the world where things made more sense. Housing felt affordable, cars felt affordable, college felt affordable, everything felt affordable. And sometimes that's partially true. But here's the catch. People remember prices. They often forget incomes. Imagine someone says, "I bought my first house for $80,000. Impressive." Then you ask what they earned at the time. Suddenly, the story becomes more complicated. Price alone never tells the full story. Yet our brains love comparing old prices to current prices. It's one of our favorite hobbies. Then comes technology, the ultimate source of generational confusion. Imagine explaining modern spending habits to someone from 1960. People pay for music every month, movies every month, cloud storage every month, software every month, fitness apps every month, meditation apps every month, apps that remind you to drink water every month. At some point, life itself became a subscription. Older generations see these expenses and think, "What are you even buying?" Younger generations see them and think, "Basic functionality." Neither side is entirely wrong. They're simply living in different economic realities. Now, let's talk about visibility. This is where social media enters and immediately makes everything worse. In previous generations, financial mistakes were private. You bought something ridiculous. A few neighbors noticed. End of story. Today, every purchase is potentially public: the expensive vacation, the luxury handbag, the gaming setup, the designer sneakers, everybody sees everything, which creates an illusion. Young adults spend recklessly because they constantly see examples of reckless spending. What they don't see are the millions quietly saving money, budgeting, investing, building careers. Responsible behavior rarely goes viral. Nobody posts, "Just contributed to my retirement account." That video gets 7 views. 4 are from accountants. Then there's a fascinating psychological trick. Each generation judges younger people using different standards. Then they judge themselves. Imagine a young person spending $1,500 on a smartphone. An older person says, "Ridiculous," then forgets they spent years making payments on expensive electronics, vehicles, entertainment systems, or whatever was popular during their era. Every generation has luxury spending. The category simply changes. One generation bought boats, another bought motorcycles, another bought designer clothing, another buys technology. Humans have always found creative ways to spend money. We're incredibly talented at it. Then comes housing. The giant elephant in every generational conversation. because this is where things become genuinely complicated. Many older Americans purchased homes during periods when housing costs relative to income were different than they are today in many markets. Not everywhere, but enough places to matter. Meanwhile, younger generations often face higher home prices, larger down payments, and more competition. The result? Different financial behavior. Instead of buying homes, people rent longer, move more frequently, delay major purchases. Older generations sometimes interpret this as irresponsibility. Younger generations often see it as reality. Both groups are looking at the same situation from different perspectives. Then there are student loans, a topic guaranteed to create strong opinions. Many young adults entered the workforce carrying debt obligations that previous generations either didn't experience or experienced at different scales. This changes financial decisions a lot. Imagine beginning adult life already making monthly payments. That affects saving, investing, homeownership, everything, again. Different circumstances produce different behaviors. Then comes perhaps the biggest misunderstanding of all. People assume spending habits reveal character. Often they reveal environment. Imagine two young adults. One saves aggressively, one struggles financially. It's tempting to assume the difference is discipline. Maybe one pays significantly higher rent, has different family obligations, different healthcare expenses, different educational debt, different opportunities. Money is rarely as simple as outsiders think. Now, here's something funny. Every generation believes it invented hard work. Boomers worked hard, Gen X worked hard, Millennials worked hard, Gen Z worked hard, Gen Z works hard. Future generations will work hard, and every generation somehow remains convinced the next one is uniquely lazy. It's one of humanity's most enduring traditions. The reality is that economic conditions change, technology changes, work changes, the skills required for success change. A person succeeding in 1980 may look very different from a person succeeding in 2026. That doesn't make one generation smarter, it makes them adapted to different environments. Think about it this way. Imagine dropping a successful 1980s professional into today's economy. They'd need time to adjust. Now imagine dropping a successful Gen Z worker into 1980. Same problem, different world, different rules. Then there's the media. The media absolutely loves generational conflict because conflict attracts attention. Headlines perform better when somebody is ruining something. Millennials are ruining this. Gen Z is ruining that. Boomers ruined something else. At this point, every generation has apparently destroyed multiple industries. It's amazing the economy still exists. The reality is usually less dramatic. Most people are simply trying to navigate the circumstances they inherited, which is considerably less exciting than a generational war, but much closer to reality. So why does every generation think the next generation is bad with money? Because people remember their own past selectively. Because technology changes, spending habits. Because economic conditions change. Because visibility creates distorted impressions. Because nostalgia edits memories. And because humans naturally compare unfamiliar behavior to familiar behavior. The funny part is that this cycle never ends. In 30 years, today's young adults will probably be saying, "When I was your age, we understood money." Meanwhile, some future teenager will be spending money on products that haven't even been invented yet. And the entire argument will begin again, exactly as it always has. Because every generation thinks the next generation is bad with money. And every generation is usually at least a little bit wrong, which might be the most consistent financial lesson in history.